Ask about Trevor.
My wife's casket was still being lowered, and my son-in-law handed me a cruise ticket. Not a hug, not a prayer, not a hand on the shoulder like a decent man might offer. A glossy, triple-folded cruise ticket. He didn't meet my eyes, just leaned in, still smelling of aftershave and privilege, and said low, so the others wouldn't hear, "Don't embarrass us, Hank." Us, like I was the stranger, like I didn't belong in the family I helped raise. I hadn't cried when the machines went flat in Riverside ICU. Didn't cry when I picked out her headstone, gray slate with her favorite bird etched in the corner, a wren. But right then, I wanted to knock his perfect white teeth into the dirt. Before we continue, if this moment made your blood burn even a little, subscribe to the channel. Like the video. Comment your story, because trust me, you're not alone. Name's Hank Delaney, 61. Born in Columbus, Ohio. Still live there in the same house we bought in '88. Two-bed brick ranch near Alum Creek. I used to be a mechanic, the kind that knows the sound of a failing water pump without popping the hood. Retired now. Hands still smell like grease some mornings. My wife's name was Emma Jean. We laid her to rest beneath a sugar maple that turns gold each fall. Back behind Scioto Grove, not far from the bridge where I proposed to her. She said yes while I was still stammering. Didn't even let me finish the sentence. 37 years we built a life. Quiet, honest, solid. The kind you think no one can ruin. Turns out it doesn't take a storm to tear it apart. Just one snake in the family. The funeral ended early. Folks left quick, like they couldn't stand the silence. Or maybe they saw what I didn't. How Trevor kept glancing at his watch between psalms. The sky had that heavy Ohio gray to it. Clouds hanging low enough you could almost reach up and touch them. The pastor's voice still echoed in my head. But the man himself was already gone, shaking hands and murmuring condolences on his way to the parking lot. Chairs scraped, shoes shuffled on damp grass. Someone coughed and muttered about beating the traffic. I stood there a while after they left, just me, the grave, the wind tugging at my coat, the sound of the casket straps creaking as the earth swallowed the last of her. Then Trevor walked back toward me like he owned the dirt she was buried in. Tailored black suit, Rolex catching the light even under that dead sky. He carried a manila envelope tucked neat against his ribs, like a banker closing a deal. I thought, maybe, he was handing me something from the kids. A photo, a letter, some small gesture of kindness. Instead, he slid the envelope into my palm and said, "Cruise leaves Friday. Emily thought it might help you." Reset. Reset? Like grief's a computer you just turn off and on. His voice had that quiet corporate confidence, the kind men practice in conference rooms, meant to sound considerate but really just efficient. I didn't open the envelope right away, couldn't. My fingers felt numb. He nodded once, gave me a tight little smile, the kind you give an employee you're laying off, and turned back toward the black Cadillac waiting on the gravel. Emily was in the passenger seat, sunglasses on, head turned away. She didn't wave. I opened it later that night, kitchen light buzzing faintly overhead, making a halo on the yellowed linoleum. Coffee gone cold. Inside, a thick packet of travel documents. $5,784. Royal Caribbean, balcony suite. 2 guests. My name wasn't on it. Trevor's was, and my daughter Emily's. There was a printout of the itinerary. Nassau, St. Thomas, San Juan. 7 nights of buffets and cocktails and sunsets. A color brochure with laughing couples leaning over ship rails. I stared until the colors blurred. Then I noticed something else in the envelope. A note. 2 lines. Neat handwriting. "Dad, don't make this harder than it is. We love you, but you need space." Love me? They hadn't visited once in the hospital. Didn't pay for hospice. Didn't even ask how I was holding up. But now they wanted me gone. Gone. but with a brochure. I sat there long after midnight, the house creaking in winter wind, her favorite mug still sitting in the sink. My hand shook just enough to rattle the spoon inside the cold coffee. The next morning I opened her closet. Still smelled like lavender and rain. The scent hit me like a fist. That's when I saw it. Her winter coat, the maroon one she never wore but wouldn't throw away, a little faded at the cuffs, zipper stubborn halfway up. Something tugged at me. Call it instinct. Call it years of marriage. Inside the pocket, folded in thirds, sharp creases, was a bank statement. Wells Fargo, account in her name, but the transaction at the bottom didn't make sense. $70,194.42, wired to T. Bennett Holdings, LLC. No note, no explanation, but the date? 2 days after she died, and I hadn't filed a single claim yet. My fingers started trembling, not from age, from knowing something was wrong. I didn't go to bed that night. Her filing cabinet was still in the den. She'd always been meticulous. Color-coded tabs, dates in pencil, folders for taxes, recipes, church bulletins from 20 years ago. I slid open the middle drawer. Behind the Medicare folder, her life insurance policy. New York Life, $50,000, still active. Primary beneficiary, spouse, Henry Delaney. Except there was a sticky note stuck to the back of the last page. 3 words. Ask about Trevor. No period. No smiley face like she used to leave on grocery lists. Just black ink and a feeling like someone kicked the wind out of me. I sat there for 10 minutes, just holding that policy. Could hear the damn grandfather clock ticking in the hallway like it was counting down to something. Each click, another reminder. She knew. She kept a brown leather folio in the attic, said it was for just-in-case things. I hadn't touched it in years. Inside, a second copy of the policy, a USB stick, a small stack of printouts, and a document I'd never seen before. Beneficiary change request, digital submission, filed 6 weeks before she died. Signed by her, except it wasn't her signature. I know her hand. Every loop, every flourish. The soft leftward tilt she got after breaking her wrist back in '03. This one was stiff, angular, rushed, forged, and notarized, stamped with the same name that showed up on the wire transfer. T. Bennett Holdings, LLC. Trevor's full name? Trevor James Bennett. I'd heard him say once at Thanksgiving, "You can hide a lot behind initials." I thought it was a joke. Turns out it was a confession. The USB drive had folders, labeled by month, labeled with her handwriting. One file, March Review, was just a recording, Emma's voice, weak, slurred, but clear enough. "I don't trust Trevor anymore. I think he changed something. If I'm not here, Hank needs to know." She paused, coughed. "He'll try to move fast. Check the bank. Check the mail." I don't remember much after that. Just sitting there in the dark, listening to it over and over. She knew. She knew what was coming, and she still protected me, even with her last breath. The next day I checked the mail. Among the junk coupons and silence there was a plain white letter from New York Life addressed to Trevor Bennett. "Your expedited claim has been processed." Inside, payout confirmation. Electronic funds transfer completed. Recipient, same LLC. I flipped the page over. At the bottom, a legal disclaimer. Any fraudulent activity is subject to federal investigation. I smiled for the first time in weeks, not because I was happy, but because I finally had a thread to pull. And Trevor had no idea I'd already started unraveling him. The thing about betrayal is, it doesn't shout. It whispers. It hides inside paperwork and polite smiles. It signs your name with a pen you never held. It calls you Dad in public, an obstacle in private. And it doesn't stop just because one person's in the ground. I spent the morning pacing between the kitchen and garage. There's a certain kind of quiet that only comes after a funeral. Not peace, not rest, more like absence. Like the air forgets how to sound normal without her in it. Every cupboard I opened she had touched. Every drawer I pulled I could hear her voice saying, "Careful with that one, it sticks." I found myself running my thumb over the worn wood handles, like I could summon her back if I touched the same places she once did. The refrigerator hummed. The clock ticked loud enough to feel insulting. The house felt smaller and bigger all at once. Small because it was empty. Big because grief stretches space. But the one drawer she never let anyone touch, her oak recipe box, wasn't filled with recipes anymore. Inside, receipts, withdrawals, even printed screenshots from her online banking, like she knew I'd be left behind to piece it together. One screenshot caught my eye, a 4,500 withdrawal, labeled medical courier fee, expedited, from her checking. The date was exactly 1 day after she slipped into that final coma. She hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, and yet her account moved. I stared at the paper until the numbers swam. The printer ink was faint at the edges. She must have printed it weeks ago, maybe when she first got suspicious. Trevor's name was nowhere on the page. But in the notes section, a forwarded number matched the contact info on that forged claim form. He didn't just plan this. He executed it while she was still breathing. My jaw clenched so hard it ached. I felt my molars grind. I drove to the branch, Wells Fargo on High Street, the same one where Emma used to deposit checks after church. We'd walk in together, her greeting the tellers by name, me waiting off to the side, pretending to look at brochures. The building hadn't changed. Red brick, glass doors smudged by 100 hands. Inside, the smell of carpet cleaner and printer toner hit me, sharp and chemical. The teller behind the glass wore a red tie and a practiced smile. A kid, maybe mid-20s. He looked like he hadn't lived long enough to know real grief. I showed him the printout. He froze halfway through reading it. His eyes darted to me, then back to the screen. "Sir, this account is closed." My stomach dropped. "Closed?" He nodded, nervous now. I asked when. He clicked for a moment, fingers drumming the keys, then read aloud. "Closed April 14th. Transferred to Bennett Holdings, LLC. Funds consolidated." The date slammed into me like a punch. April 14th. She'd been gone only days. "Did Emma authorize that?" I asked. Voice low but shaking. He blinked, then checked again. No, sir. The authorization was online. Verified through digital ID." Digital ID. Emma didn't even trust online shopping. I said nothing, but something in my face must have scared him. His voice softened. "I'm sorry, Mr. Delaney. That's all I'm able to share." He wouldn't say more, but his silence told me everything. She hadn't closed it. Trevor had, and he'd used tech she never touched. Back home, I opened the garage. Emma always called it your chapel, because I'd spend hours tinkering, even when I had nothing to fix. Smell of oil and sawdust, light streaming through dusty windows, her old garden tools lined up on the wall, still waiting for hands that wouldn't return. But this time, I wasn't there to tinker. I pulled out my old army footlocker. Its metal hinges squealed like they were waking up from a long sleep. Inside, everything the VA ever sent me. Medals, discharge papers, a folded flag. And under that, my safe deposit keys. I hadn't opened that box in over a decade. But when I did, I found the original insurance document. Stamped, blue ink. My name listed as the sole beneficiary. Unchanged, never updated. Which meant Trevor's change wasn't just forged. It was never legally binding. He didn't just bend the rules. He broke them wide open and cashed the check before the ink dried. I held the paper so long the edges grew damp with sweat. My heart thumped in my ears. Anger and relief wrestled each other inside me. Proof, but also violation. The next day I called Emily, my daughter, my only child, the little girl who once drew crayon hearts on the fridge and called me Daddy Tank, because she couldn't say Hank. I could still picture her, pigtails crooked, cheeks sticky with popsicle juice, running through the sprinklers on summer evenings. She answered on the third ring. "Hi, Dad." No warmth, just words. "I need to ask you something," I said. "Did you sign off on Trevor filing Emma's insurance claim?" A pause, a long one. I heard faint movement in the background. Maybe the TV, maybe him. Then, "I don't know what you're talking about." Her tone was flat, defensive. "Emily," I said slowly, "he forged her signature." Another pause. I imagined her eyes flicking sideways to Trevor, waiting for him to tell her what to say. He wouldn't do that. I could almost hear Trevor in the background, a low voice, muffled but present. "I have proof." Now she sounded tired, cold. "You're grieving. Maybe don't spiral. Mom wouldn't want that." And then quietly, almost rehearsed, "Maybe it's time you moved on." Moved on? From what? Her? The woman who gave birth to that girl? Who stitched together every torn curtain in this house? Who never missed a single PTA meeting, even when her knees were bone on bone? I swallowed hard, throat dry as sandpaper. Then I hung up without saying goodbye. The silence afterward was heavier than anything I'd ever felt. That night, I sat in the garage, lights off, coffee cold, and I remembered something Emma once said years ago, half joking. "If I go first, don't let that boy sell my soul." At the time, I laughed. Now, I realized she wasn't joking. I filed a report with the Ohio Department of Insurance, typed it all, attached scans, highlighted the dates, forgery, misrepresentation, beneficiary fraud. The words looked clinical on the screen, but they carried years of love and trust betrayed. Then I called the life insurance company and asked for a certified copy of the disbursement file. They were reluctant. I pressed, voice calm but unmovable, the way you talk when you've lost everything else, and truth is the only thing left. Eventually they agreed, mailed to my house, 5 to 7 days. But I didn't wait. Instead, I visited the Franklin County Recorder's office again. Same beige building, same flicker of fluorescent lights. And this time, I asked for all recent deeds signed by Trevor Bennett or any business affiliated with him. The clerk gave me a look, but pulled up the files anyway. There were 4. All properties bought in the last 60 days. All paid in full. All signed by T. Bennett Holdings, LLC. The purchase amounts totaled just over $492,000. None of it made sense until I noticed something on the third property. Power of attorney. Emma Jean Delaney. Backdated. Stamped. Fake. He'd used her name after she passed. I felt sick. Not just at what he did, but at how easily he did it. Paperwork was his weapon. He didn't need fists when he had forms. On the drive home, the clouds cracked open. Heavy Midwest rain. The kind that makes wipers feel useless, slapping back and forth while sheets of water blur the world. I pulled over on a side road and just sat, hands on the wheel, engine idling, heart pounding like it wanted out. She had trusted him. I had trusted him, and he'd turned her death into a business opportunity. I thought of her handwriting, that little sticky note. Ask about Trevor. She knew. She knew, and that meant she was afraid to tell me. That broke me in ways I wasn't ready for, because if she was scared of what he'd do before she died, what had he threatened? What had he already taken? I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel and just breathed until the windshield fogged. That night, I went through every drawer in the house, methodical, room by room, found old letters, old bills, even a shoebox from Sears with old photo negatives. But near the bottom, I found it, a torn piece of paper, part of a legal pad, her handwriting again. He says I'm confused, but I'm not. If anything happens, ask for the ledger. He doesn't know I have it. Ledger? I didn't know what she meant, not until I remembered the cedar chest in the attic. She used to keep her keepsakes there, the chest we'd bought on a whim at a flea market our second year of marriage. She'd tucked away baby shoes, anniversary cards, and once, the first love letter I ever wrote her. But when I opened it, no photos, no baby books, no wedding album. Just a thin blue binder labeled with masking tape. Emma's ledger. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside, every deposit, every withdrawal, every medical charge, even estimates from the funeral home, dated weeks before I ever called them. That meant Trevor had prepaid the funeral, had the invoice sent to his office, had the entire thing planned. Planned, not reacted, not supported. Planned. He wasn't grieving. He was project managing her death. And that binder, it was her proof, her insurance, not against illness, but against him. I ran my thumb down the edge of the binder until paper dust clung to me. For a long time I just sat there, listening out to the house breathe, the faint rattle of the heater, the whisper of rain easing outside. She had left me a map, a way to fight back. And now, for the first time since she died, I felt something alive inside me again. Not joy, not peace, but purpose. The day I found the ledger, something in me turned off. Whatever was left of the man who believed in family, who gave the benefit of the doubt, who thought maybe, just maybe, there was some explanation for all of it. He died the moment I turned the last page, because on the inside back cover, Emma had taped a note, not typed, not scribbled, written carefully like she wanted to be sure I'd take it seriously. If he's reading this, Hank, follow the paper. Don't let him smile at my funeral. You know where I kept the rest. She was right. I did. Behind the drywall in the basement laundry room, behind the pipe insulation and an old mop bucket, I found a fireproof bag wrapped in black plastic. The wall had been patched once years ago after a pipe leak. I'd forgotten about it. She hadn't. The bag was wedged deep, taped so the edges wouldn't snag. Pulling it free sent plaster dust into the air. My hands shook, not from weakness, but from a rising electric rage. Inside, a birth certificate copy, our joint will, and a small portable hard drive labeled Trevor. She'd hidden it like contraband. I plugged it into my old desktop. The fan coughed and whirred like an old dog being woken up. The screen flickered, took forever to boot. That ancient PC always did. But when the folder opened, everything changed. Folder 1, transfers, dozens of PDF confirmations, wire amounts, multiple banks, dates stretching back nearly 14 months, each line another vein he'd tapped. Folder 2, contacts, a list of phone numbers. Most were unremarkable. Lawyers, offices, bland labels. One stood out, J.R., executor, prep, executor, prep. My chest tightened. And then there was folder 3, simply labeled legal. It held scanned contracts, notarized, some bearing my forged signature, ugly imitations of my careful block letters. One stood out more than any other, because it included Emily's name. It was a mock family trust, signed 6 months ago, naming Trevor as managing trustee. Purpose, to consolidate Emma's diminishing estate for long-term liquidity. Emma's handwriting was nowhere on it, just forged initials, sloppy and fast. Like someone who thought no one would ever look close, I looked closer, and saw a clause. Relocation of elder, dependent, at discretion of trustee. That's what I was now, an elder dependent. And Trevor had written himself the right to evict me. I sat back in my chair and stared at the screen until the edges blurred. Something inside me, a quiet, steady part that had survived war and layoffs and life, felt like it cracked clean in half. 3 days later, the knock came at 6:42 a.m. Loud, impatient, I opened the door in my robe. The air still held that early Ohio chill, the kind that cuts your joints on the way down. The porch light flickered against the blue of morning just before sunrise. A man in a blue jacket held out an envelope. "Notice of relocation," he said, not making eye contact. His voice was flat, transactional, the way you talk when you're just a delivery guy and not a part of the mess. I didn't open it, didn't have to. I knew what it was. Inside would be the document Trevor had prepared. Legal on the surface, rotten underneath, and signed by Emily, my daughter. The paper trembled slightly in my hand as the man turned and left without another word. His truck door slammed. Gravel crunched. Then I was alone again. That afternoon, I called her again. "Did you sign off on this relocation notice?" She paused. I heard a faint sigh like someone bracing. "Dad, we're trying to do what's best." "For who?" "For everyone." Silence stretched long enough to feel like years. Then, before I could respond, "We voted." We. Like I was on trial. Like love was up for referendum. The word landed harder than any punch. I stared at the phone, waiting for her to take it back. She didn't. The line stayed quiet, then clicked dead. The day she said that, something broke for good. Not the small fractures of disappointment. Not the quiet ache of distance. A clean, merciless break. I went back to the attic, opened every envelope, scanned every page, and started printing. One by one, the printer groaned out sheets of proof, stapled them into packets. 4 copies, bound in manila folders, labeled in red marker, fraud, forgery, financial exploitation. I stacked them on the table like ammunition, didn't send them, not yet. Because revenge, real revenge, isn't about speed, it's about precision. But Trevor didn't stop. Of course he didn't. No. He escalated. He came by the house that Saturday with Emily. They didn't come inside. They didn't knock. They just stood on the porch like salesmen. She held a to-go cup of coffee. Paper sleeve. Steam curling up into the cool air. He held a key. A key. To my house. My jaw clenched so tight I could hear my pulse in my ears. "We're giving you 60 days, he said. "After that, well, we'll have to take other steps." His voice was smooth, polite, the voice of a man who thinks every battle is already won. I looked at Emily. She looked at the ground, couldn't meet my eyes. Trevor grinned like he'd already won. "You can make this easy, Hank, or you can make it sad." I didn't respond, just closed the door and locked it behind me. The click of the deadbolt felt louder than a gunshot. I stood there for a long time with my back to the door, breathing hard, listening to their footsteps fade down the porch steps. That night, I pulled out a picture of Emma, one from 1984, holding Emily as a baby. Emma's hair big and soft like every young mom's back then, her eyes laughing even in still photographs. Back then I'd sworn I'd protect them both. Now, I had to choose which one to fight. I never imagined it would be my own daughter on the other side. But that's the thing about betrayal. It's not a stranger with a knife in an alley. It's the smile across the dinner table, the hand that used to hold yours, and that's why it hurts so damn much. I touched Emma's face in the photo, thumb tracing the glossy curve of her smile, and whispered an apology into the empty room. The next week was a blur. Days bled into each other, coffee and paper and late nights under the humming attic light. I hired a lawyer, quietly, a woman named Karen, mid-40s, sharp eyes, no small talk, the kind of person who reads faster than you can talk and doesn't bother pretending the world is fair. We met in her small office above a nail salon downtown, smelled faintly of acetone and old carpet. I gave her everything, the hard drive, the ledger, the notarized forgeries. She read in silence for over an hour. Only the sound was the rustle of papers and the occasional click of her pen, then looked up and said, "Do you want revenge, or do you want him erased?" Her eyes were steady, unblinking. I didn't answer right away, because it wasn't a question of want. It was a matter of duty. I'd buried the love of my life beneath Ohio dirt. I wasn't about to bury the truth beside her. "Both," I finally said. My voice cracked but held. Karen's lip twitched, not a smile, but respect. The first move was subtle. Karen filed a cease and desist notice on the eviction attempt, used a clause from the trust itself. Buried in the fine print, if any party to the trust is found to have engaged in fraud, the document becomes null. Trevor had built his whole scheme on a lie, so now the foundation was cracking. She told me it might take time, that men like Trevor always try to stall. I didn't care. He didn't know yet, but I watched the ripple start, and I smiled. For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to peace, because justice was coming, and this time, I would be the one handing over the envelope. There's a kind of silence before a man makes his move. Not fear, not doubt, just calculation, like the stillness before a blade drops. That was me, the morning I mailed the envelopes. 4 manila folders, stamped, sealed, each packed with evidence so dense it could crack a reputation in half. One went to the Ohio Department of Insurance, the next to the Attorney General's office in downtown Columbus, the third, a certified copy sent straight to Trevor's employer, Midland Asset Realty, where he paraded around like a saint in a suit, and the last, hand-delivered to Emily. No note, just the truth, chapter and verse. I watched her open it through the sidelight window of her front door. At first, confusion, her brows pinched, lips parting slightly as she flipped through the first pages. Then, her face drained, color left like someone had opened a valve. She sat down right there on the threshold, the folder sliding onto her lap. Her hand covered her mouth, eyes darting, scanning the pages, then stopping as if a single sentence had hit too hard. I could almost hear the sound of her world shifting. She called 3 times that night. I didn't answer. Some things deserve silence, especially when you've spent weeks pretending your father's grief is an inconvenience. The phone buzzed on the table, screen lighting the dark room again and again until it died to black. I let it. Trevor got the first phone call 2 days later. His brokerage firm was reviewing internal documentation. That's corporate for we smell smoke. I pictured him at his glass desk, that self-assured grin slipping as his assistant whispered about compliance. A week after that, he was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Midland pulled their license records, found the deeds, found the wire transfers, found the fake trust document filed with Franklin County. It unraveled fast after that, because crooks like Trevor, they hide behind paper, but once the paper turns on them, there's nowhere left to stand. I imagined him pacing in some expensive kitchen, Bluetooth glued to his ear, voice breaking as the first real cracks showed. It got worse for him. The insurance company froze all disbursements, reopened the case, and sent me a letter, formal, crisp, apologetic. Said they had reason to believe fraud had occurred. Said they would pursue legal action. I held that letter for a long time, thumb running over the company's seal. Then I folded it and placed it beside Emma's photo on the mantel. Told her quietly, "You were right to worry, but he won't win." For the first time in months, the house felt like it exhaled. 2 weeks later, the county clerk flagged the power of attorney Trevor filed on Emma's behalf, because it was signed, get this, 2 days after her death certificate was issued. Even his dates didn't line up. They called it post-mortem notarization, which by legal standards is fraud with a capital F. Charges were filed, not civil, criminal, Class D felony. And when that news broke, that's when everything hit the fan. Emails flew, phones rang, his perfect LinkedIn profile probably started hemorrhaging connections overnight. People like Trevor build empires out of trust. Once that word goes, everything collapses. Emily came to the house. Didn't knock, just stood on the porch holding a folder like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I saw her through the window first. Pale, shoulders slumped, hair pulled back in a messy knot like she hadn't slept. When I opened the door, she looked like a ghost of herself. Eyes red, hands trembling, she handed me the folder. Inside, legal documents, revocation of trust, statement of withdrawal from Trevor's LLC. She said nothing, just stood there, until finally, I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know. Her voice cracked on the word God. I believed her. But belief doesn't erase betrayal. I nodded once, closed the door gently and locked it, from the inside, then leaned against it for a long time, heart heavy but unbending. Love doesn't die in one night, but trust? Trust can. Trevor didn't go quietly. Of course he didn't. He tried to frame it all as a misunderstanding, claimed Emma had verbally agreed to everything, that she was mentally confused near the end. He even produced a fabricated audio clip where she supposedly endorsed the trust, a hollow, tinny recording, her voice but not her soul. But the tech team at the AG's office traced the file's metadata. It had been recorded 2 weeks after her death. He didn't just lie, he falsified a voice from the grave. And that's when even his lawyer dropped him. Because when you forge the dead, you step past every line. The final nail came wrapped in blue. Certified letter from the IRS. Someone, probably Karen, had submitted a full report on unclaimed income. Because every fraudulent wire, every improper real estate gain, taxable. And Trevor hadn't declared a cent. They opened a federal investigation for tax fraud, which meant even if he wriggled free from state charges, Uncle Sam would be waiting, and they don't forgive. On the day of his arraignment, I sat 2 rows back in courtroom 4B. Old wooden pews, smell of polish and dust, a flag drooping in the corner, didn't flinch when they called his name, didn't blink when the bailiff read out the charges. Forgery, wire fraud, elder abuse, tax evasion, document falsification. Each word felt like a bell tolling for everything he'd built. Trevor stood there in a wrinkled blazer, no tie, sweat at his collar. The same man who told me, "Don't embarrass us," at my wife's funeral, was now asking the court for leniency. I leaned forward, hands folded, still, calm, cold, and when he turned and saw me, his eyes dropped to the floor. For the first time since Emma's death, I felt a sliver of balance return to the world. Afterward, I didn't celebrate, didn't toast, just drove. Down Route 62, past Groveport, all the way to that small overlook where Emma used to bring her sketch pad. The sky was painted with late afternoon gold and purple, clouds stretched thin like brushstrokes. Wind in the trees, the hum of insects, the kind of quiet that feels earned. I parked and let the engine click as it cooled, took out that cruise ticket, the one Trevor had given me at the cemetery, held it between my fingers, edges soft from weeks of handling, folded it once, then again, then fed it into the glove box, where it could rot with the rest of his lies. For a moment I closed my eyes and imagined Emma beside me, pencil in hand, laughing softly at something I said. "I did it, Em," I whispered. "He won't take another thing." The breeze moved through the grass, soft and warm, as if she'd answered. "He'll never work in real estate again, never hold a financial license, never sign another document without someone checking the ink. As for prison, that's still in motion, but the sentence has already started, because reputation is everything to men like him. And now, his name means fraud, his legacy is scandal, and his empire, built on my wife's bones, now dust. You'd think revenge feels loud, like a slammed door, or a courtroom gavel, or a man's voice cracking as he begs for mercy. But the truth? It's quiet, like standing in your driveway after the winds knocked all the leaves down. Nothing left to fall, just space and stillness. That's how I felt the morning after the arraignment, like I could finally breathe again. Not because Trevor had paid, but because he couldn't hurt her anymore. I sat at the kitchen table. Same one Emma and I bought at a garage sale in '97. Still had the scratch from where she dropped a casserole dish the day Emily brought home her first report card. That morning, the sun hit the tile just right, lit up the spot where her chair used to be. I poured a cup of coffee. No sugar, no cream. Just the way she used to drink it when the house was still full of life. And I said out loud, "It's done." I half expected silence, But something shifted in the room, like the walls let out a breath they'd been holding for months. It wasn't magic, it was just release. There were calls, of course, reporters wanting a quote, family members testing the waters, unsure whose side to land on, even a few strangers who read the story in the Columbus Dispatch. I didn't answer most, but one voicemail stuck with me, from a man in his 70s. His voice cracked, brittle with the weight of years and shame. He said his son had drained his retirement over 3 years, used his name on a second mortgage, made him sign papers he didn't understand until it was too late. He ended the message with, "Hearing what you did made me feel less stupid." I sat there with the phone in my hand long after the message ended. That hit harder than anything else, because that's what betrayal does. It doesn't just break your heart. It makes you feel stupid for trusting someone you were supposed to. And for men like us, that shame is worse than the loss. Trevor pled guilty, tried to make a deal. The DA didn't bite. In the end, he got 9 years, 4 served, 5 probation. He's barred from holding any fiduciary position, can't manage funds, can't own property without a cosigner, and every single dollar taken from Emma's policy returned, with interest. Emily sent a check, certified, no note. I stared at it a long time, thought about the little girl who once taped dandelions to my steering wheel because she thought it would make the car happy, thought about the woman who chose comfort over truth. Then I deposited it, and the next morning I donated every cent to St. Jude's, in Emma's name. She'd talked about it for years, said it wasn't fair for kids to suffer just because the world's crooked. Now, even in death, she was healing things. I imagined her smile at that. Quiet, proud. The house is quieter now, not empty, not lonely. Just honest. There's no pretending anymore. No forced birthdays. No tight-lipped holidays. I don't sit through lies and slacks in a too-tight collar. I eat when I'm hungry. Walk when the air's good. Read Emma's cookbooks, even though I can't boil rice worth a damn. The garage is still my chapel. Tools lined up, oil scent thick, radio low. And every Sunday I drive, same route, out past the quarry, through the back roads of Franklin County, down to the old cemetery at Scioto Grove. I bring sunflowers, not because they were her favorite, but because they always turned toward the light. I sit with her for an hour, sometimes more, tell her about the small things, what's blooming, what broke, what's still standing. I tell her about the neighbor's new puppy, about the kids who ride their bikes too fast past the mailbox, about how the maple over her grave is already turning gold again. I never bring up Trevor anymore, because she already knew, before I did. And the truth? I think she knew I'd handle it, not through rage, but through patience, the kind of justice that moves slow, but never misses. I sometimes catch myself smiling there, not wide, just a small private curve of the mouth, because for the first time since she got sick, I'm not powerless. The last time I visited, there was a breeze, not loud, not harsh, just enough to turn a page. The corner of her ledger had flipped open in my lap. I'd brought it one last time, to the final note. It simply read, "Love's not blind, Hank. It just trusts longer than it should." I traced the letters with my finger, her loops, her soft, deliberate pressure. I sat there a long while, didn't cry, didn't speak, just listened to the wind move through the trees, and thought about all the ways love can outlast betrayal. Not by staying, but by standing up. That night, I opened the garage, turned over the ignition on my old Ford. Engine caught with that familiar groan, the same sound that used to wake the whole house before road trips. I eased onto the highway, dashboard lit up soft green, headlights carving tunnels through the dark. There was no destination, just movement. A road ahead, clean, wide, mine. Windows cracked, autumn air pouring in, smell of distant bonfires, stars sharp above the empty blacktop. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel hunted by grief. I felt guided by it. Emma's voice wasn't gone. It was in the hum of the tires, in the whisper of wind, in every paper she left behind that told me how to fight. I drove until the sky turned pale with dawn, pulled over, poured a thermos of coffee, and sat watching the light spread across empty fields. The kind of morning that doesn't promise happiness, just clarity. And that's enough. Because revenge isn't about rage. It's about reclaiming your name when someone tries to erase it. It's about keeping the promises you made to the ones you love, even after they're gone. And it's about finding yourself, standing there in the silence, still whole. If this story struck a chord, hit like, subscribe, and tell me what you think in the comments.